Welcome back to this week's episode of Formula One Expresso News, the weekly news show brought to you by Coffee Corner Motorsport, Full Beans the podcast. I'm your host Terry, and I'm here for the next 30 minutes to guide you through all of the latest from the world of Formula One, from the paddock to the podcast, via my shed with my cup of coffee. This is the quickfire news show that you need to keep up to date with all the latest from the Formula One world. Now, what have I got in store for you this week? It's a late one because I've been reading up on Robert Reid quitting the FIA. That's going to feature heavily in today's show. We're going to be talking about V10s and whether or not I feel they're coming back or not. We're going to talk about Pirelli and tyres, automatic DRS, lack of overtaking, and at the end of the show, I will add in my Bahrain preview, which I recorded for my social media channels earlier this week, which is only 2 minutes long, which will give you a quick-fire guide to all you can expect from this weekend's Formula One Grand Prix, which is, of course, round 4 from Bahrain. So, with all of that out of the way, all of the housekeeping out of the way, there's just a quick request from me, and that is, if you have not already, please hit that like, follow, subscribe button, whatever is available to you on the platform you're listening to this podcast on. I would really appreciate it. And let's get into this week's episode of Formula One Expresso News. Okay, we can only start with one place, and that is, of course, Robert Reid, the Deputy President for Sports for the FIA, quitting today with immediate effect in what was a scathing statement against Mohammed Ben Sulayem and the FIA. Now, these are Robert's words in regards to resignation. This is what he said in his letter and then released subsequently on social media. He said, "When I took on this role, it was to serve the FIA members, not to serve power. Over time, I have witnessed a steady erosion of the principles we promised to uphold. Decisions are being made behind closed doors, bypassing the very structures and people the FIA exists to represent. My resignation is not about personalities, it's about principles. Motorsport deserves leadership that is accountable, transparent, and member-driven. I can no longer, in good faith, remain part of a system that does not reflect these values." Those are the words of Robert Reid as he quit the FIA today with immediate effect. Like I said, he'd been in the role since, I believe, 2021. He is, of course, the latest in the long line of FIA high-profile exits. We had the chief executive officer. We've had people to do with regulations go in. We've had ethics people go in. There has been a one-way exodus out of the FIA. And this does not spell good news. Now, there are, of course, supporters of Mohammed Ben Sulayem saying it's just clearing out the deadwood, clearing out people in terms of making the FIA better for the future. But if you just look at what is going on, you can't honestly sit here and say that the FIA at the moment is filling anybody with any confidence whatsoever. Now, with regards to Mohammed Ben Sulayem, he is, of course, up for re-election this year. Now, there is at the moment no suitable candidate to go up against him. We know that Dave Richards can't stand against him because the age thing was changed by Mohammed recently, so he's now too old to stand against him. There was, of course, the talk about 𝐄𝐍𝐉𝐻𝐿, which was never really sort of got off the ground. So there doesn't feel like there's a lot of opposition to stand against Ben Sulayem, and this is the big problem the FIA got. Now, the FIA have got a really not weird voting system. I suppose it's quite a fair and democratic voting system, some would argue, but it does not favour multi-candidacy. And the reason I say that is if you've got a federation, a committee, a club, whichever they call them, I can't remember the exact term for it, your vote is the same in terms of weighting no matter who you are. So you could be a small island who have got a club, and that's the same weighting as, you know, when the big European ones like Germany, like UK Motorsport, that sort of thing. So one vote that counts. Now, some will argue that's fair. It means everybody's voice is equal, and that's very democratic. Others will say that the reason that you can get into power is you can make a promise. So all of these outlying clubs, which only have a small minority of members, you can offer them things which improves their experience, and therefore you can almost buy their votes and get their votes, which then secures you the presidency, because you can then have enough in the bag to annoy the big voters, knowing that their votes carry no more weight, and you've got enough in the bag from what you've promised the other people. That is kind of the talk of how it happened last time round, with Ben Sulayem promising these outer sort of clubs more for their money, more for what they're getting from the FIA. They obviously threw their support behind him, therefore it didn't matter in terms of the European votes. But there were some big European countries who also voted for Mohammed Ben Sulayem, I must say. And Motorsport UK was one of the people who threw their support behind him, not the UK candidate. So there is a change around that's happened, I think, within the FIA from, if you listen to Dave Richards talk about that NDA and talk about how at one point they were behind him and now they're not. There's a lot of unhappy people within the organisation who are worried about the route and the avenues the FIA are currently taking. Now, the FIA are completely on a collision course with the Formula One teams and Formula One themselves. Now, this is under the Concord Agreement. Now, the Concord Agreement is due to expire at the end of this year, so it's due a new one from 2020. There are, of course, 11 teams into the mix this time because we know that the Cadillac bid is now approved, so Cadillac will be one of the teams who sign the Concord Agreement. Now, with regards to the Concord Agreement, that has been agreed, as I said on one of the earlier podcasts, in Australia. That's been agreed by all 11 teams and Formula One themselves. So the commercial side of the Concord Agreement is agreed. The prize money, how it's divvied up, how a new team coming in, the amount they're paying, all of that is done and dusted. The teams and Formula One are happy. What they're not happy about, or what they've not been able to nail down yet, is what role the FIA are going to play with the new Concord Agreement. Now, Mohammed Ben Sulayem has not been to any Grand Prix so far this season because he's been obviously observing Ramadan. So he will be in Bahrain for the first time. That will be the first opportunity that he's got to sit down with the teams, the engine manufacturers, and of course, Formula One themselves. We know that they've got the Motorsport V10 committee meeting that's going on this week, which I'll go on to the next segment of the show as well. So there's a lot going on for the FIA to catch up on. Now, there is talk that the FIA want more money and they want a bigger slice of the pie. They want a bigger cut. They see the teams getting richer. They see Formula One getting richer. And ultimately, because they settled into this commercial deal with Formula One for a nominated amount of money, and that's tied in for a 100-year contract, they're not getting a bigger slice of that pie, or certainly they don't feel they're getting a big enough slice of that pie. They're becoming under increasing pressure for paid stewards. Costs are going up, as it is with anything, and they want more money from Formula One, which ultimately means less money for the teams. So you can see where I'm going with this. The teams aren't on board with that because they're saying, well, we pay enough. We pay our entry fees. We get so much of the prize money. So from our point of view, it's not coming out of our pot. Now, Formula One are quite naturally going, it's not coming out of our pot because they're all about profits. That's what this big argument with prize money and 11th team was all about. So you can see the FIA hitting this roadblock straight away with regards to it. Now, with regards to the FIA's money that they get from Formula One is what ultimately keeps them afloat, or at least a large chunk of it. The money they get, they can't do without Formula One. Now, of course, there's an argument back to say that Formula One can't do without the FIA because ultimately they would have to find people to govern and run the sport. It's not something that Formula One particularly want to do, and it's certainly not something that Formula One could do very quickly. They would have to put a lot of things in place to do that and spend a lot of their profit doing that. Now, ultimately, the FIA own the rights to the championship and own the rights to the name as well, so that could cause a big confusion, a big issue, and a big what do we call the championship. So a breakaway doesn't feel that it's on the cards for any of the parties currently. And despite sort of people saying maybe they should try it, maybe they should do it, they both need each other. The teams will follow the money. Ultimately, that's what Formula One teams do. They will follow where the cash is going. They will follow what's best for them and best for business from that point of view. So they will naturally fall into that sort of category. Now, with regards to the Concord Agreement, like I say, there is that stumbling blocker over the FIA and what they're going to provide. We know that Mohammed wants a lot more for it. We know that his demands are a lot higher this time round to what they were on the previous ones. Now is going to be the big question of how far they're going to push it, what they're willing to accept, what Formula One and the teams are willing to compromise on, and whether or not there could be some neutral ground on getting that Concord Agreement over the line. I'm not entirely sure because I haven't seen the demands. We know the FIA are going to be hit with some financial penalties. They seem to be on a collision course with the European Commission over what they're doing with the World Rally Championship. For those who don't know, in terms of the World Rally Championship, they've basically got the commercial rights for it and they're going to run it as their own sort of championship. It was told in the past by the European Commission they couldn't do that. They're subletting it to a third party and saying, well, it's not ours. We're giving it to somebody to run for us. The European Commission aren't happy with that. That's potentially going to put the FIA on a collision course with the European Commission as well. That is going to be costly, expensive. It's going to be bad if it goes the wrong way. A lot of members are not happy about that. They don't want that. They don't feel that it's a step they need to do. So there's that also rumbling on in the background. We know there's a high-tech bid that's behind closed doors at the moment, that in terms of that bid that got rejected, the circumstances behind that. High-tech have taken them to court now. We know there's some sort of agreement, some sort of settlement, some sort of NDA. We haven't seen what that is yet. No one's talked about it. No one's discussed it. It's not appearing in any books yet, but we know it's there. We know it's coming. That's going to obviously cost the FIA a lot of money as well, potentially. They're on about recuperating their costs. High-tech are. They're on about their legal costs, their entry fee, all of these things in there. So all of these factors are going to, almost be like another nail in the coffin for the FIA if they can't get to grips with this fast. And they need to find a way to sort these appointments out, stop the traffic, and start getting some good press. And at the moment, they haven't got a lot to talk about. Brings me on to V10s, because I feel this is something they're trying to get and talk about. But I also feel this is a bit of a chicken and egg situation. Now, someone put this on my page the other day, and I'm absolutely with them on this mindset. I feel that the V10 is very much a election promise that's been chucked in there to appease the fans and to make it look like we want to do something for the fans, knowing it's not going to get through. Now, we know that with regards to 2026 engine regulations, there's talk about changing them from 2028. It won't happen, I don't feel. 2030 is the earliest change we're going to see. Will we go to V10s then? I don't know. There's a lot of opposition for it. So we've got 5 engine manufacturers going into the new regulations, because obviously Alpine have dropped out and they're now getting the Mercedes engine supply. So that is Red Bull. They've obviously got the Ford partnership, but it is Red Bull powertrains. That's the engine manufacturer. We've obviously got Mercedes. We've got Audi, who are coming. We've also got Honda, who will be supplying Aston Martin, but could be open to supplying other teams if they need to. And of course, we've also got Ferrari. Now, out of those, you need 4 out of 5 to get any engine regulation changes over. So with the engine regulations, it's done differently. It's the engine manufacturers who get a vote rather than the teams. So the engine manufacturers will get the main vote on this. Now, to get it over the line, you need a majority. In this case, it's 4 out of 5. We already know that Honda and Audi are against V10 engines, completely dead set against it. That's not what they signed up for. It's not what they come back to Formula One for. It's not what they were promised. It's not what they've invested in. They've said absolutely, categorically not. We're not happy with this. We don't want it. Now, with regards to Mercedes, they're saying the same. Now, there's a general consensus that Mercedes is saying the same, because ultimately Mercedes have got the best engine for 2026, is what we're currently hearing. Now, they would naturally want a engine that suits them. And if they've got the best engine, you want to keep it. Of course you do. As I said before on the podcast, if you've got a rubbish engine, you're pushing for a change. If you've got a good engine, you're not pushing for a change. You want to keep the regulations as they are, and you want to keep the format as it is with tweaks. Of course you do. That is common sense. Could Mercedes be swayed is probably the big debate. Ferrari and Red Bull seem adamant they want to change. Cadillac is kind of the unknown here. They said that they want to try and get one for 2028, but realistically we're looking at 2030. They've obviously going to come in with Ferrari supply. They will naturally try and vote with Ferrari on things if they got a Ferrari supply. That's how it works. We've seen this in the past with manufacturers and the engine deals and stuff like that. They vote hand in hand because they want to keep the peace. A lot of talk about whether or not V10 is right. Now, V10s are very noisy engines. We've not used them for 20 odd years. In terms of their road use technology, there's no real road use technology in them. No companies use them. None of the engine manufacturers use them. The whole point of the engine development was to try and make it so that you can have a link with road car technology and sell that technology on. So yes, you invest it and make it in Formula One, but ultimately you make money off it by putting it in your road cars. That was the whole point of the current engine regulations. With regards to the new ones, do they do it? Yes, to some degree. Of course they do. Will V10s do that? No, they won't. And that's the big problem that the teams have got. Now, a lot of the teams, or the engine manufacturers, they put a lot of money into this, and they also lose a lot of money. So they lose a lot of money in terms of, offsetting costs to their road car development programs, stuff like that. That's how they get around the cost cap ultimately. And if they can't do that because they've got no direct link to the road car project, they don't want to do it. And then, of course, you've got noise. We've got a completely different target market, a completely different demographic to what we had 20 years ago. That's not saying that as a fan, I wouldn't like V10s back. Of course, part of me wants that noise, that loudness. But also, you got to remember that we're sat here in a world where we've got Lego collaborations, we've got Hot Wheels collaborations, we've got a much younger generation, we've got a more female fandom as we used to have. Now, will all of those groups and all of those sectors want a return to V10s? I don't know. I can't speak for them. Would there be such an increase in ticket sales? Would there be such a popular demand if you're taking V10s in a street circuit where the noise is tenfold to what it currently is now. Will these tracks like Miami, Las Vegas, a street circuit, will they be happy having V10s roaring down the streets of Las Vegas if all the windows are almost shattering because of how loud they are? I'm not sure they would. That will put Formula One on the back foot. Now, the traditionalist in us will say, oh, brilliant, we can go back to the old racetracks. But again, you've got to have those tracks ready. The way the street circuits work is they're very popular amongst a new set of generation of fans who can get in and out of the track easier. And also, financially, they're very financially beneficial to Formula One. So Formula One won't want to give those up very easy. They're sat on the fence about return to V10. They're not really seeing the benefits. So with them also saying no to this at the moment, I kind of struggle to see how it's going to get into it. There is, of course, the noise. There is, of course, the rumours, the gossip. There always is, the old paddock gossip. A lot of that is about what Mohammed Ben Sulayem has promised Cadillac. And the reason I say this is Mohammed Ben Sulayem's family has ties with General Motors. Now, they've got the DPD World company. That's what his family own. That's where a lot of the money comes from, as well as what he does himself. Now, DP World are heavily involved in General Motors, who are, of course, the owners of Cadillac. There is now talk. Now, there is no evidence to this, of course, but there is now talk that that's the reason why Cadillac have come in. And the question is, have they been promised a return to V10 engines? And have they been promised a change to engine regulations? And by bringing in the new engine regulations, they're suddenly not playing catch-up. They can suddenly be ahead of the game. Now, this is, of course, completely pure paddock speculation. It could, of course, be people out to get Mohammed Ben Sulayem in the sense of, just throwing it out there as a curveball. But again, we saw this bid get accepted, but at no point did we know there was a close personal tie in terms of his family and General Motors. And I'm not saying he's done anything wrong. I'm not saying he's done anything that's unethical. But again, these positions that we keep finding ourselves in with these situations of somebody knows somebody or somebody has links with somebody is not good for the FIA's look. It's not good for anything. We had it with the stewards. We're now getting it with the president. We're now getting links with General Motors. We're getting an engine change coming in. We're getting all these things on the back of it. We're getting obviously court cases from where 𝐷𝐻𝐈 got rejected, but the Cadillac bid got accepted. Now, bear in mind, Cadillac have always been part of the bid when they were with Andretti. So the FIA said yes to, obviously, Andretti, but Formula One management said no. But at that point, Cadillac and General Motors were on board. They were part of that bid. So all of this fits into it. Now, it could just be a crazy coincidence, of course, and it could just be people out to start a smear campaign with an election year coming up. Let's not forget that. But it's also not overlooked the fact there is clearly a tie between his family, General Motors, Cadillac, and what promises have been made to Cadillac to get them into Formula One. And until we know all the details, we could all sit here, speculate, gossip, and come up with our own conclusion, can't we, on what that looks like. But like I say, for me personally, I feel it's a election promise that will get shot down by the engine manufacturers, and then the blame can be solely laid at the engine manufacturer's door in the sense of, I wanted to bring you V10s, but unfortunately, every single one of the engine manufacturers said no, and lo and behold, we're not getting it. So I'm really sorry. I tried, but I was shot down. And then suddenly the engine manufacturers looking like the bad guys in this situation, which in terms of election, by then we would have got through the election cycle and all be hunky-dory. And same with the high-tech bid. The high-tech bid, we won't get the details of that high-tech court case until after the election, which is just wrong on every level. If we talk about openness and transparency, which is something that Mohammed Ben Sulayem actually put his whole bid on when he joined as president last time around, it needs to be a lot more from the FIA in terms of openness and transparency. We can't have these high-profile resignations with these sort of statements and just have the FIA bringing out their standard letter like they've done today saying, we do this and almost like tough. It doesn't work that way. You've got to be open. You've got to be transparent. And you've got to also start showing a bit more of this for the fans to appease them. Because ultimately, this clamour that we're getting for a change, you put up a post about it, and there's just multiple people clamouring for the resignation of the FIA president. Now, I'm a UK-based creator. It could be very geographical. I don't know. I don't know the reach of my social media channels in terms of other countries. But the majority of the people on my page want to see a change at the top of the FIA, would welcome a change at the top of the FIA. Now, as I've said before, ultimately, it doesn't matter what we all think and what we all say and do. We don't get the votes. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to please us. You don't have to keep us as fans happy. It's not part of the gig as such. Of course, it makes your life easier. But if you don't need to do it, then ultimately you can carry on doing what you're doing. But that concludes really most of the podcast, 20 minutes already just on the FIA. they're in trouble. They need to come clean with some stuff. Mohammed Ben Saleh needs to step up and start showing us some things differently. And realistically, we need a challenger to go against him for the election. So at least we can say, at least somebody stood up against him and he's not been elected unopposed. I'm not saying that previous presidents have been squeaky clean. John Todd missing money, for example, Ferrari Gate. Of course not. We've had it all the way along. But what we're not seeing is this openness and transparency we were promised back at the back end of 2021 when Mohammed took over. We're not seeing that currently with the FIA, and that's what we need to start seeing. And if I'm honest, we probably need to start seeing it pretty fast. Right, quick sip of the coffee. Hopefully you're still with me. Pirelli. So Pirelli, softer tyres. So Pirelli have decided to go a step softer for Imola and Miami. I believe they're going all the way to the C6, the softer tyres. The reason they're doing this is pure and simple. They want to make the races entertaining again. They realise that we can one stop on these tyres. They realise they're not wearing. They realise we're not getting overtaken. So ultimately, they've decided to try and do something about it, probably under pressure from Formula One and the teams themselves. So they are going a step softer with their tyres for Imola and Miami in the bid to spice up the racing and to actually give us something to go with, something to deal with. That's probably the big news on the tyre front. I said before on here, I don't want tyres that explode. I want tyres that are fit for purpose, but also I want to see some strategy calls on this one. Now, McLaren played it far too safe at last Grand Prix in Japan. The reason I haven't done Japan Roundup because ultimately it was a snooze fest. Max, by the way, drove brilliantly. Nothing against Max Verstappen, but the actual race itself was, my word, wasn't it boring? But don't take anything away from Max. He drove a great race and deserved to win that and showed just how good he is. But in terms of strategy, in terms of tyres, there wasn't a lot you could do. One stopping around there, that was it. And it's just bonkers in this world now. Now, no one wants to see safety in terms of tyres blowing up. No one wants to see that where, I think back to Silverstone a few years back. I think back to Baku when tyres blew up and we had to red flag it because obviously Max's tyre went was one of a number of like back left ones, I believe, that went at the time. There's that famous picture of him kicking it because it blew up on him down that straight in Baku. So no one wants to see that sort of strategy again, but we want to be able to see a two-stopper. I keep saying I want to go back to a Barcelona style, which we had in the past, where Mercedes would hunt down a team when they were hunted down Red Bull by doing the two-stop, putting Lewis on the fresher tyres and saying, right, go catch him. We want to see that, and we're nowhere near that with these current tyres. I think it's the case of Pirelli not having any competition. I've said before, multiple tyre manufacturers would help with that. Pirelli are only here until 2027, I believe their new contract is, off the top of my head. So they've only got a couple of more years left. And then I think we're seeing another tyre manufacturer. But I think once Pirelli do sort of make way, I'd certainly like to see a return back to multiple tyre manufacturers, to be honest. That certainly would make for a spicier sort of Formula One season and something we could do without compromising safety as well. I just want to touch on automatic DRS. Obviously, this is on the back of Jack Doohan in China. For those who don't know, Jack Doohan took the first corner with a DRS open at the Japanese Grand Prix. Not China, sorry, at the Japanese Grand Prix. And basically, he went into the wall from the back end of it. And there's some talk about whether or not on the simulator it works. Irrelevant. I've tried it on my PS5 and it don't work, so you need to close the DRS. Anyone knows you can't turn a corner with DRS open. And this prompted a big debate actually on DRS and people realising that DRS isn't automatic. It's actually done by the drivers. Now it's either done two ways. They press the button or they put their foot on the brake. The unique thing about Japan is it's at the end of the DRS zone and you actually take your foot off the accelerator to ease into the corner. You don't actually brake. You just take your foot off and sort of cruise into it. That's the issue that Jack had. That's why it was left open. Some of the drivers called for automatic DRS. Others like George Russell said, no, we've not had a problem with it in the past. We just keep it as it is. Me personally, I'm kind of with George on this one. It's probably one of the only instances I can remember where we've had a major problem with it. They normally disable it if there's a problem in terms of the way it runs. I'm not a fan of seeing a big change to this. I think Jack's learned his lesson from it. I think it's just one of those things that happened, and I think we should kind of move on. I don't see there's a big call for the upheaval of it. Yes, there's a safety element, of course. No one wants to see what happened to Jack and the injuries he sustained. He looked ginger getting out of that car. I'm not sure how he's going to be going into the second of triple header. I feel it's going to take its toll on him. It feels a bit harsh because Alpine looking for an excuse to put Franco Colapinto in the car. I imagine Jack's telling everybody it's fine when he's probably in agony, the poor lad. So that's the way that Formula One works, isn't it? He's under pressure to perform. So I'd imagine him telling the doctors and telling the team he's fine, even if it absolutely hurts like hell getting in and out of that car. But ultimately, that's his call to make, and the doctor's call to make that he's fit. But with Alpine, I don't think they need any excuse to put Franco in there. And I think Jack knows that if Franco goes in that car, chances of Jack getting back in there, are looking increasingly slim. So I can totally understand what he's saying and doing, and why he's still racing in terms of after that accident. Big shout out for Esteban Ocon for being the driver to stop and help him after he got out of the car in Japan. If you look back on the footage, you'll see that as he got out and was walking gingerly, it was actually Ocon who helped him get to the weigh-in and get away from the car. So big shout out to Esty Bestie for that one. But in terms of automatic DRS, I don't see any reason to change it. I don't feel it's something we need to do. I think that it's just one of those things that just happened, unfortunately, for Jack. And then we come on to lack of overtaking for the final sort of 5 minutes of the show. So lack of overtaking. We've had Fred Vasseur said that we're now in the qualifying championship, it seems, this year, where your Formula One championship will be decided on who qualifies where because of lack of overtaking. This is ultimately because the teams have got too good. Let's give a shout out to the teams. They've designed these cars, and every year they get better and better and better. They get closer and closer and closer. Now, in terms of the Formula One grid, it's probably the closest we've seen in terms of times. But what we're not seeing is overtaking. And there's a reason for that. Dirty air. Every Formula One car produces dirty air. Every Formula One team produces a car that is designed to go the fastest it can, but can cope with dirty air because it knows at some point it will be in traffic. They're not designed to cope with dirty air. They're designed to go as fast as they can. But there's also an element of how you deal with that dirty air, because realistically, there's only one car who can lead a Formula One Grand Prix, so you need to be prepared for that. Now, the teams have got remarkably good at making these cars able to follow closely compared to what they did a few years ago. If you remember back a few years ago, you used to see a gap of 4 or 5 seconds, teams dropping back, gathering their tyres, gathering their car, cooling their car off, and then attacking again. We don't see that as much now. We are seeing gaps of like 1, 2, 3 seconds between the cars. So we are seeing them follow it ever so closely, but ultimately they can't overtake. Fundamentally, they can get close, they can get right in the gearbox, but they haven't got enough to sort that dirty air out to overtake, apart from potentially a couple of DRS zones. But then you just get the old switcheroo where on the next corner or the next DRS zone, the car behind that was in front does exactly the same batch. So that's what we're getting. They're also getting better at managing the dirty air around the tyres, which is, of course, the problem that we have with Pirelli at the top. So all of this is being compounded in this big bubble of Formula One cars that on the track will look like they're really close in terms of the timings in the championship. But ultimately, when it comes to the race itself, we get a Japanese snooze fest. Now, if you look at the time sheets, you'll see what Fred Vasseur means. It means basically if you get pole, you convert that pole into first place. You convert in terms of the race, in terms of leading the race. I know what I was trying to say there. So you get pole position, you convert that into the lead of the race, you then go into turn 1 in lead, you ultimately stay in that unless something happens that causes that lead to go away. There's not a lot of overtaking that's going on in the Formula One Grand Prix at the moment, and that's what he means by that. It is a concern. I'm not sure whether active DRS or active areas, they call it, for the next set of regulations comes into play. I'm not sure how much that's going to change it. Push to pass as well is of course said to be in there. So I don't know what 2026 will bring in terms of whether or not these aerodynamic packages will make it any easier for the cars to overtake and make it more entertaining. I just know that I feel for this year, especially with lack of development, because all the teams focus on 2026, it kind of feels like they're going to be just at a point where actually you've got these cars on the track will look like really close. On the timing sheets will be a few tenths away from each other in terms of the qualifying. But ultimately, when it comes to race itself, they won't be able to actually get past the cars in front because they can just follow without the worry of the tyres getting blistered or without the tyre wear on the tyres, because Pirelli made these bloody good tyres that last for the whole Grand Prix, haven't they, ultimately? So, yeah, I think it's an accumulation of a lot of things, but I think ultimately what this boils down to is every year the teams improve their cars, and ultimately they've got these cars that are so good they can now follow. They just haven't been able to take that final step in this set of regulations to get a set of cars that can actually overtake and make for entertaining racing. But ultimately, that's not up to the teams to do. The team's aim is to make their car go as fast as possible and to make it able to cope with dirty air, not to overtake cars. Remember that one? That's not actually what you design a Formula One car. You design it to go as fast as possible, and then you let the driver hopefully put you in a position where you can win races. Maybe we're expecting too much from the Formula One teams on that front, when ultimately that's what they're going to do. Before I come on to the Bahrain preview, just a quick one on rookie sessions. We got a lot of rookies, 6 I believe are in line for rookie sessions over the course of the weekend. This is of course because rookie sessions have gone from 2 to 4 for this season onwards. So last year they had to swap out each one of the drivers once. This year they got to do it twice. That's 4 times. Now bear in mind, if you were a rookie at the start of the season, you can count those as some of the tests. So I'm not quite sure how how they do it, but I'm pretty sure lots of Kimi Antonelli in Australia free practice will technically count as a rookie session because he was a rookie. Obviously, people like 𝐓𝐇𝐈𝐒 probably won't because they didn't set number of Grand Prix. Liam Lawson obviously won't. So there are some things in there anyway. But yeah, the team's using Bahrain for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, because it's a nice, easy track in terms of the runoff. So very little in terms of crashes that happen there, in terms of big crashes that damage the car. It's more around runoffs and gravel traps and stuff like that. The teams know it really well because of data, because they've done pre-season testing already. So they got a boatload of data from the 3 days they've already done there. So having one of your drivers missing a free practice one isn't the end of the world here at all, because one, they've already driven there, two, they've already driven 2025 cars there, and three, you've already got a shed load of data to compare it to from when you were there just a few weeks ago in terms of pre-season testing. And of course, it is a track that hosts F2 and F3 races, which means a lot of the rookies are already there. They've already done sim work on it, and they've already driven the track. So therefore, it makes it a very popular choice to have a rookie session on that one. So yeah, that's why we're seeing so many of the rookies take place on Bahrain. And with that in mind, it's just enough time for me to give you my quick 2-minute Bahrain guide, which I filmed for my social medias at the start of the week. It's that time of the week again. Here is your quick preview to this weekend's Bahrain Grand Prix as we enter round 4 of the Formula One World Championship. We have a total track length of 5.412 kilometres, 57 laps, 15 corners, and a total race distance of 308.238 kilometres. We've got 3 DRS zones, and in 2024, we had a total amount of 40 overtakes for the race, which, after what happened out last time out in Japan, we'll all be hoping this figure is remotely accurate this time around. A pit stop in Bahrain will cost you about 24 seconds, and Pirelli have opted to bring with them the same tyres as what we had in Japan last time out, with the hardest in their range available for the teams, which are of course the C1, the C2 and the C3 compound tyres. A safety car has a 60% chance of being called into action, and as for that all important weather, we have the following for this weekend. Friday with free practice 1 and free practice 2, very hot but northerly wind, peaking of up to 20-30 kilometers per hour, some uncertainties regarding the temperature. Free practice 1, temperature of 33 degrees, free practice 2, 30 degrees, and 0% chance of rain. Saturday will be sunny, a slight northerly wind, slightly increasing for free practice 3, 32 degrees, qualifying 28 to 29 degrees, and 0% chance of rain. And of course, that all-important race day on Sunday, the same weather as Saturday, with a hot air temperature, northerly wind during the day, decreasing for the race, a race start temperature of 27 to 28 degrees, and once again, a 0% chance of rain. And that is my quickfire preview for Bahrain, all in under 2 minutes. Let me know what your thoughts are for this weekend. Right, and that should be it. That should be 30 minutes. It's been whistle stop. It's been a late one, so apologies for not being as long as what it normally is, but it is still 30 minutes. It does cover off, hopefully, what you need to know from the paddock to the podcast via, of course, my shed. So that's it for another week. I just want to say a huge thank you to the people who messaged me about doing this on a weekly basis. I've had a couple of messages from people saying that actually you really like this quick roundup of what's going on in the Formula One paddock. Something that's really enjoyable. As I said before, the numbers have been doing really well on it, so it's something I'm really keen to keep going. So really appreciate anybody gets in touch, and just want to say a big shout out to anyone who's followed recently. The numbers have gone up quite a bit on terms of the social media as we start the new season, so welcome to the coffee corner, and hopefully you're getting all the information you need on this one. As always, shameless plug for the website, www.coffeecornermotorsport.com. On there you'll find articles, you'll find the podcast, you'll find the latest links to all the social media, you'll find everything you need under that website. There are quite a few more written articles going on there, especially around like IndyCar, F2, things I've managed to get accreditation to. So for those of you maybe wondering why it's branched out a bit more, these are the sports like Formula E where they've actually given me some accreditation. They've given me some stuff. Formula One is notoriously hard to get that for. So what I've been trying to do is collect all these things to prove that hopefully one day somebody in Formula One will give me a shot at covering Formula One on a more professional basis. But at the moment, Formula E have done that, as well as IndyCar have done that, and Formula 2 have done that. So if you're seeing that appear, as well as Formula One Academy, I've been following on there as well. So if you do want to check out any of those support series, head on over to the website. You'll find some articles on there. I haven't done a lot in terms of videos because I'm not sure there's a big demand for it on the social media channels at the moment. If you do want to see more, let me know. I'm quite happy to put some in there. But That's all I got for you this week. Hope you have a great weekend. Hope you enjoy Bahrain. We are, of course, the second in triple header, so I'll be back next week. There'll be another preview for Saudi Arabia as well in the mix as well, so make sure you tune in for that one. And as I said before, if you could do me that quick favour of hitting that like, follow, subscribe, whatever button is available to you on the platform you're listening to, I would greatly appreciate it. So with all that in mind, cheers. Have a good week. Catch you soon.